years old. And he would still run up and down this hill like he was a kid. And so we made multiple trips, he and I, and so he was, right. Well, I made all those trips later with Larry and Phil because that was a whole nother story. You know, that after I learned all this, and I spent the time if I did, as we came down through here, my dad developed Alzheimer's, so he really couldn't talk much about it. And so when he died, I came here, I was deaf. And an eagle went straight down the hollow with us as we walked. And that's when I brought my sons. They didn't know about it either. And so I taught both my kids, I said, I'm gonna show you where you came from. And so we came here, and now it's a tradition every November 21st. I'll either run this hollow or walk this hollow. That's the day. That was his birthday.
I can hear the raindrops falling. It's cold outside, and I kind of feel like calling, but it's too late now. I just miss you. I just miss you.
I didn't find Phil and them until years after I had been brought here with Calvin. So by that time, I had brought Calvin here as long as his wife would allow me. Because when Calvin got into his 80s, we'd almost have to stop going up the hill all the time. And pushing a wheelchair out of here was almost impossible. But he showed us so much about this hollow that, you know, was lost. You know, the only thing I have is what he told us. So it's pretty interesting. I mean, as we go down here, we'll see irises. We're gonna see some daffodils. I'm gonna show you the boundary line of how close this house was to being allowed to stay and how it wasn't. And so when the parkland came through here and they found Joe, they found somebody that the people in the hollow respected because most of them worked for him.
Oh yeah.
There's my grandmother, my grandfather skiing up here.
Oh, wow.
I gotta get to that house. I gotta get to that picture. I gotta find that picture. Since we're waiting. That's Joe. That's my great granddaddy.
All right, so if we stopped here, if we could take it in our heads and we could imagine 1929, standing in front of us right here would have been a 2-story, massive white house with staircases going up to it, fireplaces on both sides, boxwoods around the sides, and flowers. Because the daffodils are gone now, but as we walk in here, you're gonna see them, okay? And this was a 2-story house, 2-sided house with a breezeway through the middle like a Frank Lloyd Wright design, so that they were able to cool the house. But the heat on the other side of the house was for winter use. So that part of the house was not used only in the winter because it was the kitchen. And so they didn't use it. So let's walk through the tick area.
So Bill Fawcett told me that Joe Wood had this story that he hung that bucket on a tree. And that tree was hung with a copper nail. I mean, that bucket. So David Klein and I found that bucket years ago, like in 16, and I don't know if it was on that tree or not, but we hung it back up on that tree, but there's no nail. So might still be a tree here that has a copper nail in it. Or somebody might have taken it out and hung the bucket up a different way.
Now, in my world, this probably would have said in its day, Wood's Distillery. And it had an apple on it. And if you find the logo's there. Carrie, you do have the logo? Larry does. So the logo has an apple, and it says Woods, okay, Wood, and then it says apple brandy. So I can just picture in my head all these little bottles leaving this hollow that had brandy in them, right? You know, and so to me, the anger comes because this top had to have been invented not long after the cork, because there it is. So the cork top, that would have been on that bottle. Isn't that cool? So the anger is not because this, it's because that was a legacy. you know, kind of as I've gotten older, you know, I mean, like her, for example, I mean, she's a trail hiking machine. I mean, she started hitting trails. I never really did that, you know, except here. And now that she's done what she's done, and I go to Black Rock, I go to Rag, and I go to Peaks of Otter, or I go to Humpback Rock, or I walk Alden's Trail. You know, I see what they saw, and I get it. But the way you did it. I do see the importance of what we have, because my kids see it, their kids are now seeing it. And when we come down here with my family, which we're sure to come today, when we do come down here, and I tell my grandsons about this, they just look at me like, what? They'll never feel what I feel, because there's not a connection. But the thing they do remember is they walk down this trail and they saw rivers and they see paths, and those were created by the national park. And so it's getting harder to be bitter because I'm getting older.
It's things like this that got me to the Blue Ridge Heritage Project. So I met Bill Henry, that's all right, and not until after I did this, all right, and then it was just like, oh my gosh, I can't believe it, and, you know, and I was posting on my Facebook page all the time. I didn't tell anybody where it was, but I'd take some pictures and say, oh yeah, and my rhetoric then was the same as his. You know, they took our great-grandparents' land away, my grandmother's land away. But the thing that was really irritating to me about all of it is they took generational land away. To recognize these families for, look at the house, look at the foundations that's still here. Okay, they did this by hand. They didn't have all the equipment that we have now. Look at the miles of walls you see in the park that they built to keep their hogs in or their cattle in. Well, hogs out, yeah, their cattle in, and to be able to support people. Because of this road, my great-grandparents fed Civil War soldiers. They fed strangers. They housed them overnight. Anybody that came down this road that needed food or anything like that, they did that. It makes us a very unique group of people when we want to share that. And when you talk about Tom and I coming down here today, we're all so full of energy and, you know, you all are here, it's because we're sharing it. We're sharing it to people that might not know. Some of us do know, most of us here today do know, but what you're doing is going to share it to a whole new public that needs to see it. And then when they come to Shenandoah National Park and they buy their yearly passes and they're like, okay, let's work on the Shenandoah 500. Okay, you work on that. Remember, this trail right here had a family living on it. This family built those walls that you see and those foundations that you see.
It's 2 a.m. and I can't fall asleep. I'm just not tired. I can hear the raindrops fall.